So it seems Piers Morgan has finally woke up to the genocide in Gaza. I think it's quite cynical. He has no beliefs, obviously. He's kind of seen the writing on the wall and he's gone, oh God, let's pretend that I'm against this. He doesn't care. He has no values. It's all for the clicks. But I do want to go over a discussion between Benny Morris and Norman Finkelstein. So let's get straight into the video.
I'm going to be joined now by two people with very different views about the war, Professor Norman Finkelstein and Benny Morris, Israeli historian. Well, welcome to both of you. Benny Morris, my main question right now for Benjamin Netanyahu, I put it to him on X directly. And I said, if you're doing everything by the book and everything is justified and everything is legal and you're not committing any war crimes or any of these things, I simply asked him one simple question. If you're doing nothing wrong, let international journalists go in and see for themselves. And I think it is completely shameful that the Israeli government continues to stop international journalists from doing their job. And it's down to the individual risk assessment will be by the journalists and their companies. It was put to me on 2-3 days ago by an IDF member that somehow this was being done for the safety of the journalists. It's not. It's complete nonsense. And that's not down to the Israeli government anyway to make that call. I mean, do you at least accept that it is wrong that journalists are not allowed in there?
I completely agree with you, Piers. The government has made a terrible mistake in not allowing journalists in, and whoever dies there dies, but they should have allowed them in. But I would like to make a comment about what your...
What? What? That's an insane thing to say. Yeah, whoever dies there dies. If the IDF kill the journalist, like, what the hell?
Previous guest was saying, he said he spoke about objectivity or something. The man is a total Hamas propagandist. Half the things he said were outright lies. Lots of doctors have been abducted and have disappeared is total nonsense. I know of 1 or 2 cases of doctors who were taken to an Israeli detention center. What happened to them afterwards, I don't know. I don't think they've been killed. I think they're under arrest for whatever reason. But
so they could have been abducted.
Many doctors have been... doctors
you're basically agreeing with him, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I'm saying that he talked about
many doctors. You just said you know of some doctors who were detained. You have no idea what happened to them.
I know of 1 or 2 doctors.
You're confirming his story.
No, I'm not. I'm confirming a small part of what is true. The rest is a lie, as is a large part of what he's saying. Had Israel wanted to kill all the Palestinians, that's what genocide actually means, there would have been...
No, it's not. Like, you hear this talking point constantly, like, if Israel wanted to kill... No, they've displaced, well, tens of thousands, killed tens of thousands, in the hundreds of thousands. Like, we don't even know. Like, the fact that we don't even know the extent of death and destruction, we know it's a lot. Why not let the UN in, do the investigation? Well, we know why, because we will see the extent of the death and destruction. And then the question is the West going to step up and arrest Netanyahu and charge him for war crimes? Because what Piers Morgan is doing now is meaningless unless he really, he can tweet at Netanyahu. But we have to call for serious consistency on this stuff. In the way they talk about Putin, the way they talk about anyone else, we need consistency from the West.
Been many more deaths in Gaza. Each time Israel launches an air raid, we hear of the Palestinians saying 24 people have died, 30 people have died, and I'm sure many of them are civilians, but I'm also sure that the Air Force going in against these targets is attacking Hamasniks. We never hear from the Hamas how many of their people are being killed in these strikes. All we hear about and all we see on television is dead babies and dead women. They never show grown male, army-aged males being taken out of these ruins.
Yes, because way more innocents are being killed, and they're clearly not just targeting Hamas. That's the problem here. Oh my God.
And the Hamas uses these things systematically there, the schools, the hospitals, various so-called safe compounds to hide in.
But, okay, but
behind
out
this
of interest,
civilian
out of
shield.
interest, all right. But Benny Morris, when you hear someone like Smodrich last week talking about the campaign to just clear everybody
He's
out,
disgusting. You don't have to convince me. He's disgusting.
right? But so my question for you,
who,
but my question for you though is this. All right, he's disgusting. What he said was disgusting.
Yes.
But what he said was also
Yes.
genocidal. Whereas you do not believe it's genocide that's going on, he clearly is talking in a way which made me believe that actually maybe the intention is genocide. It may not be the death of absolutely everybody, but it means killing a lot of Palestinians and kicking the rest out of the area. And that is a genocide.
No. A genocide is something which is top-down government policy and carried out systematically. That's not what is happening.
Yes, it is. I'm sorry, it is.
He is definitely, some of his speeches are genocidal. I don't know what he means exactly. And there are other ministers who speak like him, and they shouldn't be doing that. And they may even have a genocidal mentality, but they do not control government policy, and they do not control what the army is doing. That's done by the generals, and unfortunately, in my mind, by a man called Netanyahu, who's totally corrupt and incompetent.
Yeah, okay, we bring in Norman Finkelstein.
It's got nothing to do with, but it's got nothing to do with genocide.
Well, I think you're getting perilously close to agreeing with me. Norman Finkelstein, I mean, the bottom line is, if it sounds from the rhetoric like a genocide, if the actions on the ground are becoming increasingly genocidal, if there's no other plan being put out there for what happens to Palestinian people other than many more will die and the rest will be thrown out of Gaza, I don't know what else you end up calling this. And, you know, I listened to that doctor. I didn't hear somebody that I felt was a Hamas sympathizer or propagandist. He went out of his way to say he wasn't.
He's just a liar. He's a liar.
Well, he's a liar who's lost 78 members of his family. Okay. So, I mean, Norman Finkelstein.
Maybe it's true, and I agree, and I feel sorry for him, but they're caught up in the bad situation where Hamas controls the population and is willing to sacrifice as many civilians as they can to win world support.
Well, which is exactly what Israel's also seems like they're prepared to sacrifice. Norman Finkelstein.
Well, thank you for having me on the program, and I hope that you'll hear me out. Is it a genocide? Well, as you know, Piers, from the first time I appeared on your program many months ago, I said it was a genocide. I said it was perfectly obvious when October 9th, the then Defense Minister Ghoul said, we're not going to allow in any food, fuel, water, or electricity. Well, for a hermetically sealed population, that's a genocide. When the head of state, Mr. Netanyahu, compared the current situation with Amalek and invoked the biblical reference, it was clear, as the Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem put it, that he was talking about genocide. Now, in the 19 months that have elapsed, there have been adjustments in Israeli policy due to external pressure. That's called politics. So when the external pressures escalated, they had to diminish the genocide. And then beginning roughly when Kamala Harris was nominated for president in the United States, and all the cameras switched to the American election, Mr. Netanyahu, who's very sensitive to and knowledgeable of the American media, he then escalated the genocidal assault on Gaza again. And then, as you remember, because I did several programs with you at that time, as you'll remember, every day there was another massacre. There were so many massacres, it was impossible to keep count, and it was impossible to remember. Now, again, there was some lessening.
The first massacre.
Of course he's going to interrupt. You spoke for a long time. Let him speak.
Okay. It was launched by Hamas.
Okay. I've not forgotten it. Benny, but you have, Benny, you have to remember manners. I'll remember the massacres, and you remember manners. I'm speaking now. So there were times when Israel, as I said, escalated the genocide and then diminished the genocide. Now, let's talk about the responsibility and the mindset. You've mentioned Mr. Smotrich. I mentioned Mr. Netanyahu. There was also several others whose names have constantly come up. Obviously, Defense Minister Gallant, who was indicted along with Prime Minister Netanyahu by the International Criminal Court. But it's not just the leadership. It's not just the leadership. The most recent poll showed that fully 1/2 of Israeli Jews, we're talking now about the population, fully 1/2 of Israeli Jews believe that Israel should conduct a genocide in Gaza. That's what the poll result showed. 82%.
That's a lie. That is a lie.
80, I know, Benny, everybody's lying.
There's
but allow
never
me
been
to
a poll
finish.
about supporting
Please,
genocide.
Mr.
This is nonsense.
Benny,
You're purveying lies.
Okay. Okay, Benny.
Is that
Benny,
poll, Norman? What is that? What is that poll? What is that poll, Norman? It seems a very important poll. That.
The poll
What is
was
that poll
taken,
you're referring to?
It was a university, if my memory is correct, it was a University of Pennsylvania poll. It was reported everywhere. Benny Morris knows about the poll. He's fully informed of the poll, but he's doing his job as an official Israeli propagandist.
No, I have no job. I don't like this government.
Benny,
I'm not their spokesman.
You've reduced
you
yourself. You've reduced yourself, Mr. Benny. You've reduced yourself to the level of a Holocaust denier. It's a real shame that you have sunk so low. But allow me to continue. The poll showed that 82% of Israeli Jews, 82% support a forced expulsion from Gaza.
That's not
of the
the same as genocide.
population.
That may be true.
Really? Yes, it is. It is, in effect, de facto. If you went to 1930s Germany and you said, yeah, the Nazi Party, the population of Germany, want an expulsion of the Jewish population, German Jews, he would be calling that a genocide. It's exactly the same for the Palestinian people. It's unequivocal. And the Israeli public are pretty far right-wing on this. They do not like Palestinians. And you've got to call it out. You've got to call it out because they've been radicalized. And yes, they've got a history. They were victims of the Holocaust. But it kind of shows you we don't learn the lessons for history. The victims can also be the carriers out of a genocide.
May be true, but that's not genocide. That's not genocide. What you said before about genocide is total nonsense. Total nonsense.
Piers, you're going to have to ask Benny Morris to please allow me to speak.
Well, Benny, I will let you respond to this.
You're taking up all the time, though.
He's not. You're interrupting him, so he can't finish fucking point.
Yeah,
But
Norman, you must give him a chance to respond.
Okay, I will finish. I will finish. Then one of the leaders of the opposition in Israel.
Why is he laughing? He's kind of saying true points, good points. This isn't funny.
Described Israeli soldiers as killing children as a hobby in Gaza. Now, yes, he took it back. He took it back after he came under ferocious attack. But he himself acknowledged when I debated Mr. Morris about a...
Why is he smiling at that? Like, what is wrong with this guy?
year ago, and I said that Israel targets children, he laughed. He thought it was such a funny remark by me.
It's absolute.
I'm wondering.
How have so many children been killed then? The cognitive dissonance is astonishing.
I'm wondering, After the
Why don't we
foreign
stick to some
doctors in
facts?
Gaza, after the foreign doctors in Gaza attested that the children were being shot in the head and the chest. And when one of the leaders of the opposition in Israel said that the Israeli
Piers, can I
soldiers
answer?
killed children
Yeah, I
as
must
a
let Benny
hobby,
respond, Norman. I must let Benny respond.
To be fair, Norman could go on for a while, like the crimes that Israel has committed on the Palestinian people. Like, and he's laughing, he's interrupting because he has nothing. Like, let's hear his response. I'm sure it's going to be great.
Benny.
There has never been a poll asking Israelis whether they support genocide. This is a total lie, and the 50% figure is also something completely out of Norman Finkelstein's imagination, his twisted mind, actually. There is no targeting of children deliberately, and what this politician said, and he's actually a very clever politician and usually tells things straight and the truth, was a slip of the tongue, and he said, I made a mistake.
A slip. Oh, one could say a Freudian slip. If you know what that is, you know what it is.
I said the wrong thing, and I shouldn't have used that phrase. Stupid phrase.
Oh my God, really? Like, they've got nothing. It's like, imagine having to do this, like, come on to, well, not TV, but a big platform and actually have to, like, try and defend a genocide. Oh, God. It must be pretty difficult. He's not doing a very good job.
Phrase. Israeli soldiers do not target, as a rule, children. There may be, and I'm sure there are and have been, war crimes committed by Israeli soldiers and pilots, perhaps, in this war in the course of 19 months. But I don't think we should forget that Hamas...
Oh, that's a kind concession. Will they be held accountable for that, Benny?
Hamas is a homicidal, a homophobic, misogynist, totalitarian organization which tried to kill as many Israelis as they could, most of them civilians, on the 7th of August. And what befell Gaza as a result is revenge for that attack by the Hamas. And the Hamas said they would do the same thing again if they are revived and resuscitated as a leading organization in the Gaza Strip. And I think that's the objective of the Israeli army, to end Hamas rule and to end the Hamas as an organization in the Gaza Strip. And anybody normal who doesn't support Islamists, doesn't support anti-Semitism, doesn't support misogyny, doesn't support homophobia, should be against Hamas, which Norman Finkelstein apparently isn't.
Yeah, but I don't.
Okay, that was weak. That was, again, nothing. Absolutely nothing.
I don't hear people supporting Hamas certainly in mainstream media or anywhere else. Everyone's of a unanimity that what they did was unconscionable and they should be held to account. The problem is that the strategy that the Israeli government is... Yes, I heard.
No. Let's talk about what's happening. Not what people want to do. What Israel is doing. The power they have. The military they have. The backing of the UK and America. That's what we need to be talking about, Benny.
Still want to do and say
but
they
Benny,
want to do.
Benny, let's just assume, because they said it themselves, in fact, the spokesman said it after October the 7th, that if they can do it again and again, they will. So they want to get rid of all the Jews in Israel. Okay, that is Hamas.
And of the state of Israel. And of the state of Israel.
But the problem is, as I've always said from the start of this, what is a proportional response to what happened? And what is the end game? What does Israel actually want at the end of this? And I'm beginning to think they don't have any plan at all. That actually what they're hoping is that they can pursue the line of many of the more right-wing members of that cabinet. Maybe Netanyahu himself now has been introduced into this because he has no incentive to end the war, because the moment it ends, he'll be held accountable for allowing October the 7th to happen in the first place, which was hugely unpopular for him and the Poles with the Israeli people. But secondly, he's facing corruption charges in a criminal court the moment this is all over. There is no incentive for him to end it. And so this carries on and on with more and more Palestinians being killed. And all right, you might have a belief that the IDF never deliberately target children, but they are deliberately and relentlessly targeting.
A belief based in nothing, by the way. Just he doesn't like it, or maybe he does like it. He just detached from reality completely.
Civilian areas in their estimation, going after Hamas, but in the process, they know they are going to kill on a daily basis dozens, if not hundreds, of innocent people as well. And that's been going on now week after week, month after month. And at some point, you surely have to concede that this strategy is not working. It's making Israel global pariahs. It's making Israel global pariahs. There is no evidence that Hamas is being dismantled. In fact, the opposite appears to be happening, where for every Hamas terrorist killed, they're apparently replacing them with multiple more people who share that ideology. The hostages are not being released. God knows how many of those hostages may be killed now with these intensifying airstrikes.
No,
Israel now says it's launching.
Can I correct you?
Israel now said, well, let me finish.
You about the
Israel now says it's launching a massive new attack. Well, okay, bully for Israel, but actually none of this seems to be working. And so at some point,
can I correct you?
I say enough. Yes, correct me.
Okay, I understood that. Can I correct you on one small point? The Hamas kidnapped 251 hostages, most of them Israelis, some of them Nepalese, some of them Thai, on the 7th of October 2023. Of those, 177 were actually released as a result of the Israeli counteroffensive in interim arrangements.
Well, they were released by diplomacy, actually. They were released through diplomacy.
But the Israeli military pressure is what persuaded the Hamas, because they also.
So why is it not working
now?
Why isn't it working now?
It will work. I don't know. Firstly, there's only 20 alive Israeli hostages left in Hamas hands. I do believe that the government was incompetent in.
We don't know that. We know there are over 50. Over 50 are not accounted for.
No, we know there's 20 live ones and assumed 38 dead ones. That's what the Israeli
but nobody
intelligence
knows for sure.
knows. Okay, nobody knows for sure. The government now, which was incompetent and I think incompetently managed this war, that's why it stretched out for so long. Though don't forget, we also had a war with Iran and with Hezbollah, and we continue to have a war with the Houthis from Yemen. So it's not just been Israel focusing only on Gaza. But
but in the war, if I may say, before I go back to Norman, with the war with Hezbollah, that was a scenario where Israel, in terms of military operation, brilliantly targeted 3,000 Hezbollah terrorists in a way that begs the question, why could they not have done a similar operation on Hamas? And I've heard all the excuses and explanations and arguments, but in one case, Israel has now, since October the 7th, 2023, just launched endless strikes and assaults on civilian populations in Gaza, killing, we don't know how many, but we know it's many tens of thousands, including over 20,000 children, in a population with 50% under 18. And in their offensive against Hezbollah, which was incredibly successful, they targeted 3,000 terrorists with pages, which have got explosives in. There's a massive difference in the way that Israel's gone about these two counter-terrorist operations, as they would put it. And I would argue the way they went after Hezbollah had global support in a way that the way they've gone after Hamas in Gaza is increasingly making Israel a global pariah. Norman, your response?
I agree with you completely. But there were
He's not listening, is he?
two reasons for that. The first one is that the Hamas has systematically hidden behind civilians and in tunnels underneath civilian centers.
Are we having
a debate
or a monologue?
Norman.
We'll end on Norman's response.
With all due respect to you, Piers, I think there's a misunderstanding about what's been happening since October 7th. Once October 7th happened, it was a crisis for Israel. About that, there's no dispute. But it was also viewed, as the cliche had it, it was also an opportunity. And the opportunity was to once and for all solve the Gaza question. Now, from day one, it was perfectly obvious that the goal of Israel was to solve the Gaza question through three methods. One, ethnic cleansing. Two, make Gaza unlivable. And three, mass killing, mass death and destruction. Now, if you look at it from that vantage point, the operation has been hugely successful. I don't know why, with all due regard, and I do respect you, I don't know why you keep saying it's been unsuccessful. They've destroyed about 90% of the housing in Gaza.
Why does this creep keep laughing? He's fucking disgusting. Like, what's funny? Like, the plan has gone to, like, Piers saying there's no plan. There's clearly a plan here.
They've destroyed about half the hospitals in Gaza. They've destroyed about half the universities in Gaza. They've destroyed about half the arable land in Gaza. Gaza won't be habitable anytime in the next 2 decades, according to the best estimations by the international community, international organizations, the World Bank, the and International Monetary Fund, UNCTAD, and so forth. It's been hugely successful. Where we're at now is the final phase. And the final phase is why all the rats, like the leadership in the UK right now, and the French and the Canadians, they're trying to jump off the sinking ship because they know exactly what Israel has in mind. We're now at the apocalypse, the final phase. Mr. Morris has written a lot about 1948 in Israel. And in fact, what's happening now is very similar to what happened in October 1948. If you read his books, which I have, you see a massive escalation of atrocities during the 1948 war as they're trying to finish the job. And now Israel is trying to finish the job. If you read your own Financial Times, it described very beautifully what this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation was about. They were going to set up 2 or 3 distribution points in the south of Gaza. And then everybody from the north and the middle of Gaza would have to go to the south in order to get food or water or medicine. And then when everybody was congregated in the south, what do you think is going to happen? Exactly what happened in October 1948. There were going to be the massacres. You know what they were going to say.
Can I say something?
There was rioting. There was
No, you can't.
rioting at the food distribution centers. The IDF felt afraid. And then it started to fire. And then they hoped
Piers,
in
can I
one
say
fell
something?
swoop they could
Norman,
send
you
the
must-
whole population over the border into Egypt.
He likes to lecture.
It's perfectly
He always likes to
obvious.
lecture.
I'm sorry, you've spoken more than Norman has. You've gone on, you've interrupted. Let Norman speak.
What Israel is doing now. It's the last stage, or I should say, it's the final stage of the final solution. And now some of the Western leaders don't want to have to dirty their hands with it. So suddenly
You said
people
that
like
already. You said
Lamy are discovering that it's intolerable, the situation in Gaza. Guess what?
Can I
It's
say
been
something?
intolerable since October 8th.
Okay, final word, very briefly.
No, we don't want to hear any more Benny Morris. See, they have nothing. It's true what Norman's saying here. You see it with Keir Starmer, you see it with David Lammy, Mark Carney, and the moron in France. They're trying to act like, oh, stop Israel. You've gone too far. The damage has been done, pretty much. Like, there's no going back. We funded this in the UK. America, Joe Biden, Donald Trump. Like, it's insane to hear this guy, Benny Morris. He has nothing. Like, they have nothing. It's just pretty depressing. So, on that depressing note, I'll see you in the next video.